Okay, so today we're going to start talking about COPD. And what is COPD? What it stands for is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Okay, and I have had some people say that actually the that it doesn't have, not disease but disorder. So it's chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So let's move this up just a little bit like this. Okay, and this is what we're going to be talking about. So let's take a look at this real quick. And there's two parts to this. So in COPD, we are going to have, basically this is when someone they have chronic bronchitis. All right, they're going to have chronic bronchitis. And they're also going to have emphysema. Now, some books will also say that they have asthma or chronic asthma. Okay, for the most part, though, it's just these two that are up in here. So you're gonna have chronic bronchitis and emphysema. Okay, so let's take a look at this. And the first part, I know we've already covered chronic bronchitis before, but here's the thing with chronic bronchitis. This is why it causes a problem in COPD. When you got chronic bronchitis, we basically said it's usually when you have bronchitis for longer than 3 months. So it's bronchitis for longer than 3 months. Okay, now here's the problem that's going to happen with chronic bronchitis is when you have bronchitis is basically you secrete excess mucus. Okay, and what's going to happen is when people smoke, what happens is, if you recall, we said that there were cells in our respiratory system, which we called epithelial cells, and these epithelial cells had cilia on them, right? We called this cilia. And then what was going to happen is we also get mucus on there. We get mucus that would be secreted. And if you recall what we said before, I'm going to just draw my mucus up in here. And what we said would happen is that your cilia, as it moves, it's going to move microbes and things up through the chest and into the throat and then you're going to swallow it. Okay, and then it can go down to the stomach. Well, when people smoke, what happens is they start to decrease the amount of cilia. So the two things are going to happen. One, the cilia is going to start to be destroyed, and it could even shorten. Okay, so our cilia can be destroyed, or shortened, or it may become, it won't move. It will become non-motile. So in other words, what I mean by non-motile is it's not going to move that mucus up towards the throat, right? So now, what's going to happen is, first, as you smoke or do anything like that, what's going to happen is you're going to start to get a buildup of this mucus. We're not moving the mucus, right? And as a reaction also, we're going to start to secrete more and more mucus. All right, so let's take a look at what can happen when that occurs. So I'm going to draw here. This is going to be my trachea. All right, there's my trachea. I'm going to have my primary bronchi, and then I'm going to get my smaller bronchi, and I'm just going to go down to where now we start to get our smaller and smaller bronchi. So what's going to occur here is, as we secrete mucus, and this can be on either side of the lung. In fact, it's going to be on both sides of the lung. as we secrete mucus, the mucus is going to start to build up. Like we said, the cilia is no longer working, so my mucus is going to start to build up. This is called a mucus plug. Okay? And as the mucus builds up, as you can see, it's going to start to clog my airways, my bronchial tubes. Okay? So now what's going to happen is basically when I go to breathe out, something happens. When I go to breathe out, first of all, these bronchial tubes, when you go to breathe out, they become a little bit smaller, right? So the fact that they become smaller means it's going to be a little bit hard to get air out, right? But my alveoli actually squeeze a little bit too. But now that I have the mucus plugs, as this becomes smaller, so let me draw this one right here. So if this were to become smaller, right, and decrease in size, you can see now that it's going to be harder for air to get around these mucus plugs, right? It's going to be harder for air to get around these. So when that happens, basically we're going to start to get some air building up down in the alveoli. So that's the chronic bronchitis part. We're going to get the mucus plug, right? In fact, let's write this down over here. So with the chronic bronchitis, we get excess mucus, right? And these form mucus plugs, which block airways. Okay? So that's the chronic bronchitis part of this. All right? And again, the smoking, and I didn't mention this at the beginning, but the most common reason people get chronic bronchitis is from smoking. So it's going to block airways. Smoking or irritants. If you're in an area that has a lot of dust or anything like that, it will help destroy the cilia. So we're going to say smoking and etc. damages the cilia. Okay, it's going to damage the cilia. And then what's going to happen is after it damages the cilia, your mucus starts to build up. So I'm running out of room down here. So let's just continue this up in here. So I'm gonna go like this. Okay, so once again, so we damage the cilia, and when we have damaged cilia, what happens is we can't move mucus. And then the mucus plugs form. And then air can't get out, get in or out. Okay, so that's the chronic bronchitis side of this, all right? So we're gonna have the damaged cilia, we can't move the air in and out. This is what the smoking does. This is what, if you're in dust or any type of pollution for a long period of time, it can also cause this, okay? And then one other thing, I don't know if I mentioned it, also with chronic bronchitis, excess mucus is produced. So now I have my damaged cilia, I can't move the mucus, I'm making too much mucus too, all right? And so I end up with these mucus plugs. So just to reiterate one more time, with chronic bronchitis, I'm gonna get excess mucus being produced because of the fact that I have irritants. The irritants are also gonna damage the cilia. The cilia can't move the mucus out. Mucus starts to pile up inside there. We get the mucus plugs, and now it's harder for air to move out. Now, on the emphysema part, here's what's going to happen. Is we've already said that what's going to happen in emphysema is basically, we have a alveolar duct that's going to come down and supply air to a whole bunch of alveoli, right? And like we said yesterday, as time goes on, what happens is with these alveoli is they start to lose the inside of this. So basically you have septums that are between these. So what's going to happen, like we said yesterday, is you are going to have the inside of this basically get destroyed, right? And then this can actually blow up and become even bigger as more and more air gets trapped. But let's look a little bit more about what's going on here with the emphysema. So when you smoke or you get irritants into your body, here's what's going to happen. So I'm just going to draw, here's my alveolar aqueduct, all right? I'm just going to draw a really big alveoli, so just one. Now remember, there'll be a whole bunch here. And I think I just called this aqueduct. This is the alveolar duct. It's not an aqueduct. Okay, there's the alveolar duct. This is my alveoli. So what's going to happen is inside of here, we basically have white blood cells that are macrophages. They're called alveolar macrophages. So here comes our little smoke, right? And what's going to happen is my alveolar macrophage is basically going to go and it's going to eat the smoke and bring it inside. When it does, right? So now we have this inside. So when it does, it's also going to send signals out to neutrophils. Okay, that's an E. So it's going to send a signal out to neutrophils. And what the neutrophils are going to do is they are going to come and they're going to release something called proteases. Okay, so my neutrophil will release something called a protease. Okay, now what the proteases will do is there's one type that's called elastase. All right, it's called elastase. So what it is it's basically an enzyme that's going to break down elastin. So let me explain what's going to happen here. So around our bronchial tubes, we have, I'm going to erase this, we have elastin. It's going to go around my alveoli also. So let's go like this. I'm going to just draw this sideways now because I think it's going to be easier to draw. So here's my alveolar aqueduct, and here's my alveoli. So around this, we are going to have elastin. All right, so this is called elastin. And elastin is just like it sounds. It's like a rubber band. It's elastic. When you blow out air, so in this case, you're going to blow out carbon dioxide. As you blow it out, there's something called Bernoulli's principle. And what Bernoulli's principle is that moving air has less pressure than the surrounding air. So because this is going to have less pressure, what should happen is this tube should contract, right? It will contract. But elastin keeps the bronchial tubes from collapsing. I'm just going to put airways. And let me see if I can put this airways. From collapsing. Okay? So now, when you breathe out, once again, as you breathe out, this is going to contract a little bit, but the elastin is going to keep that from collapsing. So it'll help keep it open. Because remember, like I said, moving air has less pressure than the surrounding air. This explains why, like if you're taking a shower with a shower curtain, the shower curtain sometimes comes in because you have the water moving the air, and so the air inside the shower is actually less than the air outside the shower, so the curtain comes in, right? So it's kind of the same thing here with elastin, it's kind of the same thing here, but the elastin keeps this from collapsing. Well, what's going to happen is this elastase will now go over and start to eat away elastin. So as it eats away the elastin, right, this will start to collapse. And so now it gets harder and harder to breathe in and out. And so like we said before, air is going to get trapped. So now my air gets trapped in here, right? I'm gonna have CO2 get trapped in there. I'm also going to have, it's gonna be harder for oxygen to come down this way too because of the fact that these are collapsed, right? So that's the emphysema part. So now, let's look some more at what's going on with the COPD. And if you watch TV, you'll see commercials for COPD. They have medications for this, all right? So we've already said it's when someone has emphysema, COPD, right? Someone's going to have emphysema and chronic bronchitis. I know I'm squeezing that. This word here is bronchitis. I know I'm kind of squeezing that in there. All right. We already said that what's going to happen is we get mucus buildup. Let me go like this. The bronchitis causes mucus to build up. And block airways. All right, so it's going to cause the mucus to build up and block the airways, right? Or the emphysema prevents air from getting to the lungs. Right, and like we said, it's because of the elastin, right? And therefore, if air can't get to the lungs, it can't get into the bloodstream. Okay, so air can't get into the bloodstream. Okay, I'm just leaving this for a minute so you guys can write just a little bit. If you need to, just pause the video. I'm going to erase it. Okay, COPD, it gets worse over time. All right, so it's going to get worse over time. Okay, it's almost always caused by smoking. Okay, it can also be caused by chemicals, and I've mentioned some of these as we've gone along. Chemicals, air pollution, and secondhand smoke. Okay? Okay, I'm just letting this sit for a second so you guys can write notes. Right now I'm going to erase it, so if you need more time, just pause the video. Okay, so COPD, it is a leading cause of death There's no treatment. Okay, so it's a leading cause of death. There is no treatment. TX stands for treatment, and no cure. Okay, some symptoms. I think obviously would be shortness of breath, a cough, and you spit up mucus. This can also lead to pneumonia because some bacteria actually like to live in those mucus plugs. Okay? And then I'm going to try to squeeze the next one in without erasing. Okay? And people who had lots of lung infections as kids are more likely to get COPD. Who had lots of lung infections as kids are more likely to get COPD. I know you can't see this right now, so I'm gonna go like this. Let me just move my camera. So people who had lots of lung infections as kids are more likely to get COPD. Okay, and that's it for COPD. So there you go.